A grieving young woman, shunned by her entire town, gets an alien home invasion on top of everything else. And somehow that turns out to be exactly what she needed. We open with Bryn practicing a smile in the mirror that never quite reaches her eyes, adjusting the corners of her lips in an effort to make the expression look effortless, though the sorrow behind them is impossible to hide. Living a quiet, isolated life alone in the childhood home she grew up in, tucked deep in the woods outside a small town, she works as a seamstress, stitching garments with careful precision, even as the work fails to warm her the way real companionship once did. Her days blur together in repetitive silence, and she fills them writing letters to her deceased mother Sarah and her late best friend Maud, tucking each one delicately into a wooden box, as if her words might somehow drift through some unseen veil and actually reach them. In her living room, she's built an elaborate miniature version of the town, complete with tiny painted buildings and roads, a peaceful, idealized world where no harsh words are ever spoken and no friendships are ever broken, frozen in a comfort untouched by grief. The actual townspeople keep their distance from her, especially Maud's parents, and Bryn does everything she can to avoid them in return, caught in a web of unspoken town gossip, some choosing to whisper when they see her, others pretending not to see her at all. One night, Bryn wakes to a strange, mechanical tone, an odd sound like a distant car alarm or horn, at first assuming it's just an animal outside or a restless dream, but then she senses movement inside the house itself. Looking into the hallway, she comes face to face with a tall, pale, unnervingly graceful humanoid entity, its skin stretched tight across bone, and its eyes bottomless pools of black. It walks unnaturally on the balls of its feet, toes curled downward, as though gravity holds no real claim over it, emitting glitchy, stuttering, modulated noises instead of any real speech. She tries hiding in the shadows, watching it scan the room as if searching for something specific. And just as it seems to be leaving, she dares to move, only for it to lunge at her with terrifying speed, pinning her down and hurling her across the room with sheer telekinetic force. Her head strikes the doorframe hard enough to blur her vision, but clinging to consciousness, she reaches for anything nearby, her hand closing around a jagged piece from her model town's bell tower. And with trembling strength, she drives it into the creature's body, finally stopping it for good as it collapses, still and silent. The next morning, dazed and shaken with her ears still ringing from the night before, Bryn discovers every electronic device in her house is completely dead. Not the lights, not her phone, not even her car, with a strange, scorched, ozone-like smell lingering in the air. Needing answers, she pulls her bicycle from the shed and pedals slowly into town, the air feeling unusually heavy around her. Along the way, she notices toppled vehicles, doors left ajar, cracked and broken windows, and homes abandoned mid-routine, lawns half-mowed, radios stuck in static, as if something swept through and hollowed the whole place out. At the police station, Maud's parents react with cold hostility, her father staring blankly straight through her, while her mother steps forward and spits directly in her face, without a word, driving Bryn to flee immediately, running not just from the station itself, but from the memory of a friendship that ended in accusation and aching silence. Desperate to escape, she boards a local bus, filled with strangers, quiet, motionless passengers who stare out the windows without blinking as the bus winds along the forest road. Something shifts. One man suddenly stands and turns toward her, his eyes glinting unnaturally. He reaches for her, followed by the others, their mouths opening to reveal small, twitching organisms lodged deep in their throats, pulsing and squirming with a slick, wet sheen. The passengers erupt into a frenzied, animalistic scramble, clawing at one another in their rush to reach her first, groaning in tones that sound more mechanical than human. Bryn barely fights her way free, leaping off the bus and disappearing into the trees until the sounds fade entirely. Returning cautiously toward the edge of town later, she witnesses more infected residents behaving strangely, hands raised to the sky while making chittering sounds, their necks bent awkwardly, confirming her worst fear. These creatures have taken over the townspeople completely, nesting inside throats, beneath skin, behind eyes, puppeteers cloaked in human flesh. Back home, as dusk falls, Bryn finds the alien's body still lying where it fell the night before, twisted and slack-jawed on the wooden floor, its limbs too long, its eyes still still bottomless, a metallic, wrong scent clinging to it even so. She doesn't flinch or run, waiting until the nausea passes before setting her jaw and getting to work, boarding windows and securing doors like a woman preparing for siege. The old wooden planks groaning under her hands as she moves quickly, cabinets get pushed in front of entryways, tools are gathered, sharpened, and placed within reach, and she reinforces the living room where her model town once stood, sweeping aside the ruins of its tiny streets and steeples, no longer a place for make-believe, but a battleground. Now that evening, the sky shifts, a low hum rattling the window panes as she peers through a crack in the boards and sees unnatural light descending from above, a tractor beam from a ship overhead, piercing her window and lifting the alien corpse slowly into the air, arms dangling, until it vanishes into the glowing mouth of the craft, leaving Bryn breathless, with her heart thundering with no time to process what she's just witnessed. Two more intruders arrive before the hour ends. The first, smaller than the others and quick and twitchy, its limbs bending with unnatural agility, bursts through the kitchen window and lunges for her. Bryn fights back, wild and breathless, biting at its wrist to draw a thick black fluid, scratching at its eyes, and throwing boiling water from the kettle across its face. The creature howls, slamming into furniture and clawing at her ankles, and at one point she nearly escapes through a window before it grabs her foot and drags her back down, forcing her to kick free and scramble to her knees, before finally driving the sharp end of a broken mop handle into its chest, watching it convulse and go still. The second intruder proves far worse, a man who seems to spot her escaping the house, though something about him feels deeply wrong. His eyes too still, his mouth frozen in a strange, crooked smile. Bryn realizes too late that he isn't acting of his own will at all, a parasite puppeting his every limb. He charges and grabs her, yanking her backward by the hair and dragging her through the grass, despite her kicking and screaming, throwing her down at the feet of something waiting just outside, an alien far larger than the one she fought earlier, standing like a shadow carved from smoke, silent and unmoving. That larger creature suddenly lunges, chasing her relentlessly through the woods. And raking its claws across her back before its legs get tangled in the wreckage of her car, giving Bryn the opening she needs to spark a lighter and ignite the leaking gas tank, engulfing the creature in flames without waiting to confirm the kill. Bloodied and limping back toward the house, Bryn is intercepted by yet another creature, this one slower and strangely reluctant. Almost mournful as it forces a parasite into her mouth, sending her spiraling into a vivid, comforting hallucination where Maud is alive again. Her mother's voice echoes through the hallway, and her model town stands whole and untouched, even inside the illusion. Some part of her remembers the truth, and tearfully apologizing to the version of Maud before her, she rips the parasite from her own mouth by force. She wakes alone in an open field, watching the parasite wither and shrivel in the dirt beside her, before a descending saucer bathes it in light. Transforming it into a perfect physical copy of Bryn herself. Horrified, she flees as her own doppelganger gives chase through the woods, eventually catching and stabbing her with a blade before Bryn manages to drive a box cutter into its neck, finally ending it for good, then quietly staying beside the dying copy until its last breath. Unable to fully separate herself from empathy, even in that moment, stumbling onto an empty road afterward, Bryn comes face to face with a massive alien towering above her, and before she can react, she's bathed in light and lifted straight into the ship above. Inside, surrounded by silent observers, the aliens don't touch her physically, instead reaching directly into her memories, pulling forward the truth she's buried for so long. The argument with Maud, the fall, the rock, the accidental, unintended moment that took her friend's life. The very reason the entire town turned against her afterward. The aliens study her grief and isolation closely, exchanging something unspoken among themselves. Before ultimately releasing her back to the road below, alive, unharmed, and completely free. In the days that follow, Bryn rebuilds her home from the wreckage, sweeping away the damage and repainting the walls. The town remains under the aliens' quiet influence, its residents moving with distant eyes and oddly wide smiles. But they no longer shun her the way they once did, waving, greeting her warmly, even offering gifts, which she accepts, despite knowing exactly what lies beneath their newfound kindness. Her grief over losing Maud hasn't vanished, but it finally begins to ease, and for the first time in a long while, her home no longer feels quite so empty. Above her, a quiet fleet of saucers lingers across the horizon, watching and waiting. And Bryn, for once, doesn't look away, finding herself happier than she's been in years.